For most of my life, fear has been my first response. Not excitement, not curiosity, fear. If I messed up at school, at home, or later on in my adult life, I always felt like I was in trouble. And for a long time, I thought something was wrong with me. What I didn't realize at that time was that it wasn't a weakness, it was just conditioning. In this episode, I want to take you through that journey. I'm your host, Tinashe Moyo, and this is Stride. This podcast is about taking bold first steps, the ones that take us through the dark moments into the brighter days, all the way up to the moments of clarity. Thank you guys for tuning in. It really means a lot. Now, let's dive deeper into this. All right. So, ever since I was a kid, I always struggled in school. I wasn't the brightest, and it seemed like every single time that I messed up, it always resulted in punishment. I remember vividly this time when I was in grade two. We were doing our work. And so I submitted my work to the teacher. And she, before I even got back to my desk, she called me back and she told me to redo the work. And as she was telling me, she said, I want you to write this like that. I want you to put this like that. And once you're done, even if you mess up, I will not beat you up. So when I heard this, I said to myself, this is a promise. So I walked back to my desk and I casually did the work that she told me to do. I was much more relaxed because I kept the promise in my mind and in my heart. And then once I was done, I resubmitted my work. The moment she saw the moment she saw my work, she starts shouting at me and she starts slapping me. You know those little slaps on the hands, like when you were a kid. Those are some of the slaps you'd get. So it was slaps on the hand and on the face, right? And as she was smacking me, the whole class was laughing. And in that moment, I felt so betrayed. That was the first time I really got to know what betrayal felt like. So, by virtue of that, my classmates in particular started picking up on that kind of treatment in regards to how the teachers would treat me. And it ended up, or it resulted in bullying, which was really hurtful for me. And I ended up losing confidence and I was always in fear. I would dread to go to school because I knew that if it was break time or even in class, I was going to get mocked or people would just push me around. There was no respect. And that really put me down. And, you know, back at home, reactions were mostly based on my performance in school. Now, this is not to say I've got anything against my parents, but at that point in time, my performance in school was the one that contributed to the reactions I would get at home. And that even made things worse. I lived in fear when I was a kid, and I lost all confidence. I lost all belief that I could do anything. And, later on, as I grew older in my adulthood, it even got worse in the sense that whenever I would want to try something new, I would freeze because I did not have that belief anymore. Whenever I would think of something, I would want to try something. I had that fear like, if I tried, I'm not going to succeed. So I always had that fear of failure. And, you know, it even got to a certain point where later on, I got a job, right? And, I think most of you know that I'm a designer, right? If you don't know, now you know. So I would design something at work, even something that I was happy with. But still, when it came to the point where I needed to submit, it was really difficult for me because I had the fear of judgment. I would fear that people would make fun of me and my work. And so sometimes I would not submit work or I would submit work late, which, yeah, in the design world, it's something that's not needed in the design world. So it made things really, really tough for me. And, the fears even spilled into this podcast as well. You know, I'm really someone who is quality oriented in almost anything that I do. I'm always like trying to chase quality just to make sure everything that I create is good, right? But sometimes when it comes to releasing episodes, I used to have that fear of getting either no views or just little views. Or sometimes I would even, get that fear of like criticism. There's other people who get hate comments and stuff. And I would always feel like if I release my content, what are people going to say? Like, even if I fumble upon words, what are people going to say about that? Like, there was a lot of things that I would actually struggle with in regards to releasing episodes. That's why you don't get the consistency. I'm always talking about my inconsistencies here, and it's all because of, things like fear. And when I when I just look back at all these things, all of these experiences, it just reminds me of this movie that I watched called Orion and the Dark. It's a 3D animation movie, and I really loved the movie. So the character called Orion, um, he was this kind of character who always had negative thoughts. In anything that he would think of, he would come up with the worst case scenarios. And those worst case scenarios would actually stop him from taking action. Orion was really afraid of the dark. So he couldn't do anything. But now the interesting thing was Orion found a solution. Orion, the, the, the pronunciation is weird. Let me do better on that. Uh, okay. Uh, okay. So he sorry, excuse me. So, anyways, this was actually meant to be a serious episode, but yeah, um, it doesn't matter. He found a solution. He ended up befriending the dark. And by virtue of that, life got better for him. He started taking action, even talking to girls, which was one of the things I would actually struggle with, you know? Yeah. So he got that solution. And then I thought to myself, like, I'm sick and tired of living in fear. Like I literally can't do anything. So I need to find solutions. And I ended up finding a solution in something that is pretty much absurd, which is exposure therapy in horror movies. Weird, right? Yeah. So I just thought to myself, like, okay, what's the one thing that really scares me the most? And I quickly thought horror movies. Because back then, when I would watch horror movies, once I was done, I would always think that whatever it is that I watched in that horror movie is going to come for me. But this time around, I had a different mindset. And so I chose to watch a couple of movies. I watched Salem's Lot, which is a movie based on a TV series about vampires, which we used to watch when we were kids. I also watched Smile 1 and 2. It's part of the Smile franchise, a creepy movie, actually. Um, I watched Pennywise, oh, damn it, with Pennywise the dancing clown. Yeah, I know. And I also watched Slender Man. For me, it was creepy, but I was just like, huh, okay, um, let me get through it anyways. So the goal was to prove to myself that after watching these movies, nothing, and I mean nothing, was going to come for me after I finish watching those movies. And, you know, that actually worked in my favor. But, anyways, the moral of the story is this: fear will always exist in this life we live, right? And also, if fear didn't exist, then courage would never exist. Because for us to develop courage, we have to face our fears. And I had to use exposure therapy to start facing my fears in life. Now, the Bible in Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10, there's a verse, I will shorten it, that says, "Do not be afraid." So, this is merely God's promise that He will always be there for us. So, we should not fear. Now, I want you to get this. Me saying I chose exposure therapy doesn't mean I abandoned the Bible. I'm a firm believer in God, and I really love and respect the Bible. And I read the Bible. I don't often read it, just to be honest with you guys, but I do my best to get, guidance and assurance from that. And whenever we read the Bible, there are voices, or rather, there's a voice, an inner voice. I think everyone gets that kind of inner voice that tells you to do something. I got a voice that told me that if you want to face your fears, go watch the horror movies. At first, I was just like, don't we have another solution? I mean, what are people going to say if I tell them that I used exposure therapy to face my fears? But then also, I then remembered that there was still that voice in the back of my head, that fear that was still telling me, like, if you do that, people are going to judge you. So I had to get through that kind of voice. So listen, in as much as I've watched a few horror movies, I still have a few other horror movies that I still need to watch, like The Nun, the Conjuring series, The Curse of La Llorona, all of these different horror movies, Candyman as well. Um, this is not to say I'm now immune to the horror movies. I've conquered fear altogether. No. The step that I took to watch the movies has actually made me a much better person than I was before. Now I can handle certain situations differently because it's not just the horror movies. The horror movies, yes, I made them a staple, but the mind begins to open up. The mind begins to shift like, okay, I don't even know why I said it's not the, yeah, you know what? Never mind. Too much confusion. But it's like the mind opens up to certain different horizons where you simply tell yourself, like, no, even if you do this, you don't die. You know, if people judge you, you don't die, you don't melt. You know, it's just up to you and how you handle things, how you react to things, you know? So I think that's pretty much the whole idea, the the uh, the approach that I took to like face my fears. And now I feel so much better. And yeah, I think that's pretty much the whole story. So I found my coping mechanism through exposure therapy and watching movies. I mean, watching horror movies. Man, I could have killed this line. Come on. Anyways, the real question is, what's your solution? I leave this to you. It's your turn to figure it out. If you struggle with fears, yeah, that's the question for you. Anyways, we have come to the end of the episode. And if you found value and if you enjoyed this video, you might also want to watch episode 2 called The Power of Embracing Insecurities, which pretty much talks about my fear, how best can I put it? My insecurities regarding the shape of my head and me not wanting to get haircuts because, yeah, I feared people would laugh at me, people would judge me because of how my head looks and where my hairline is. But, anyways, I won't spoil that for you. Go watch that episode and it's going to be helpful for you. So, make sure you subscribe. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.